Hello friends and welcome back to this channel. My name is Nonya and I am your real estate tutoress. I am back with another video on grounds for discipline. So on this channel, I bring you the best tips and tools to getting a real estate license. I also answer any questions you may have about the process. If you are new, welcome and do consider subscribing. In today's video, we'll be focusing on the Illinois portion of the examination. And so we'll be talking about 7 grounds for discipline, 7 reasons why a person's license could be suspended, revoked, or they could be fined because they violated our Illinois Real Estate License Act. On the exam, they may throw scenario questions at you and ask you if this is a violation of the law. So you need to be aware of what activities could constitute a violation of the Real Estate License Act. Today's scenario is a big one. It is one person's violation, but they had 7 different violations in it. So it's one scenario, but with 7 different violations. And I got this from the IDFBR newsletter. And so let's jump in and take a look. It says, a real estate managing broker's license was revoked and they were fined $25,000 for altering a sales contract without authorization from all parties, failing to deposit earnest money in an escrow account, failing to account for or remit money belonging to others, engaging in unprofessional conduct, dishonest dealing, pursuing a continued and flagrant course of misrepresentation, and making false promises, failing to make available to the department all escrow records within 24 hours of the department's request, failing to maintain transaction files for 5 years, and for failing to report the loss of records to the department. All right, that's a handful. That's a handful of information. There's a lot here that's covered in this person's violation. If you take a look here, they made changes to the contract. They didn't deposit earnest money, failed to remit the money belonging to somebody else, engaged in all these activities, did not provide records to the department, and they didn't keep their records for 5 years, and they also failed to let the department know they lost their records. So now we're going to look at each of these individual things and kind of break down how they could have been avoided or what things that this licensee should have done. And of course, we don't know the backstory of all of this, so I'm just going to go off of general information and hopefully give you some examples too of things that we should not be doing so that when you get those scenarios in the exam, you know how to respond. Let's jump in. Altering sales contract without the authorization of all parties. Now, if you remember in the contract chapter of your book, of your course, when we talked about contracts, we as licensees only use pre-written forms, and then we fill in the blanks for our clients, and then our clients sign. And if, let's say you're working with a buyer, your buyer client signs, then you present it to the seller, seller agrees, the seller signs, now we have a contract. Any changes to this contract must be at the direction of the parties, so either the buyer or the seller, and both have to agree. Because remember, for a contract to be legal, there has to be that meeting of the minds. Both parties have to agree to all the terms of the contract. So any alteration shouldn't be done by us, number one. And then secondly, if it's done by us, it must be initialed by all the parties. So that's the first violation here. Second violation, failing to deposit clients' funds in an escrow account. What is it called when you do not deposit your client's funds in a separate escrow account, but instead you put it with your personal or your business account? So I'm gonna pause for a second here, put it in the chat, or in the comments rather. So that's called commingling, right? And that is one thing that we should not be doing as licensees. So when the money of somebody else, your client's funds, come in, the sponsoring broker should have a separate account. Usually it's a non-interest bearing account, except if the law requires that the account is an interest bearing account. okay? So your sponsoring broker has a separate account for this money, and they have to keep account of the money. And that's also one of our fiduciary duties. And that takes us on to the next violation, which is failing to account for or remit money belonging to others. Failing to account for or remit money belonging to others. So we're supposed to be able to account for their money, and when we're required to return that money, it should be available because it's in its own separate account and not mixed in with our personal or business funds. So this individual was unable to account for the money and return it to the owner. And so that was one of the reasons this person's license was reprimanded. It's a fiduciary duty as licensees to be able to account for our clients' funds. If the money needs to be returned, the money needs to be returned within 1 business day. And one thing that I forgot to mention when we talked about depositing the funds also need to be deposited within 1 business day. Don't remember 24 hours, 1 business day. It's not 24 hours. And let me tell you why it's not 24 hours. What if you get the check on a Saturday and the banks are closed on Sunday? You can't deposit it in 24 hours. I know we have mobile deposits and all of that stuff, but the business is closed, right? It's not your regular business hours. So next business day is when we deposit the funds. So before we jump into the 4th violation, if you are finding value in this, please do like this video, subscribe to this channel, and click on the notification bell so that you are notified when I release a new video. Number 4, unprofessional conduct, dishonest dealings, misrepresentation, and false promises. We don't know exactly what this person did, but some examples of unprofessional conduct would be, for example, showing up intoxicated or showing up to meet your clients under the influence of some sort of drug or other substance, right? That will not be a professional conduct. Misrepresenting information to your client or to somebody else, lying to a customer, that is also a violation of the law. Because if you remember, in your agency chapter, we owe our clients fiduciary duties, but we owe customers honesty and disclosure. So things that we need to tell them by law, we need to tell them, right? And we always need to be honest in our dealings. You can't make false promises to people because that's lying, right? That's also a dishonest dealing. If it smells funny, if it's a lie, if it's you trying to look good in front of your clients when you know that's not the truth, or trying to make a transaction go through by covering up certain things. Okay, so if on the exam, if you get those types of questions or those types of scenarios where someone's like, well, it's not a big deal, but the house will sell, that's a red flag because that's a dishonest dealing. The fact that you're doing something wrong, even if it gives you a good outcome, it's still wrong. And in the eyes of the law, it is still wrong. These were some of the violations here. And so be aware of them when you are working with clients or answering questions on the exam. If I was going to take a stab at guessing on this particular scenario that we saw, I may say maybe they lied about the money and the fact that the money was available, this client's money was available when it wasn't, right? So that could have been a scenario. Right, on to the 5th one, failure to provide records or documents to the department within 24 hours of the request. According to Illinois real estate law, when they request documents from you, you have 24 hours to supply them. And so this person obviously didn't do that. And so it was part of the discipline. So if IDFPR requests documents, they're auditing the files, you have 24 hours to produce those documents. Number 6, failing to maintain transaction records for 5 years. In Illinois, all our transaction records must be kept for 5 years. All your brokerage agreements, 5 years. Your transaction files, your contracts, your disclosure forms that were signed, even email communication you have with your clients, all of those things should be kept for up to 5 years. And this is the responsibility essentially of the sponsoring broker, not necessarily you, but I mean, keep your emails and things like that for 5 years, just in case something comes up, you have a record of it. They have an escrow account, keep those records as well. All of our records, like I said, even with appraisals, because I remember you guys have an appraisal chapter. So appraisal records are also kept for 5 years. So all real estate transaction records are kept for 5 years. And because that's the law, the 7th violation here was that this person failed to keep the records, and I'm guessing they claimed that they lost them. So if the law says you have to keep them, if you lose them, you're supposed to notify the department, but this sponsoring broker did not. And that's why this person was reprimanded. If we go back to this original slide, right, you can see here that this license was revoked and the person was also fined $25,000. Revoking the license means the license is gone. This person is no longer licensed. This is not a suspension where you can come back later. This license is gone. And they were fined $25,000. $25,000 is the maximum fine that can be handed out for a violation of the Real Estate License Act. So all of these things this person did were just over and beyond anything that should be happening. And I think it's because there was just so much that this person's license was revoked, and then they were fined the maximum of $25,000. Now, this $25,000 is also the maximum they can fine someone who is not licensed, but is practicing real estate. So this is the maximum fine that can be dished out for any kind of discipline under the Illinois Real Estate License Act. So let's recap again. First one was altering the sales contract without the authorization of all parties. Second was failing to deposit the client's funds in an escrow account. Third, failing to account for or remit money belonging to others. Fourth violation, unprofessional conduct, dishonest dealings, misrepresentation, and false promises. 5, failure to provide records or documents to the department within 24 hours of the request. And 6, failing to maintain transaction records for 5 years. Finally, failing to notify the department of lost records. There you have it. Those are today's grounds for discipline. There's 7 of them. These are grounds for discipline that you need to know for the Illinois portion of your real estate license examination here in our state. Let me know in the comments if you have any additional questions, and then jump on over to this next video where I talk about 5 grounds for discipline. And I will see you there.